Welcome, everyone. So glad you're here with us for another explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's basically the heartbeat of any healthy nonprofit, but it takes on a whole new level of gravity when we're talking about ministry. We're going to be walking through the actual journey of joining the board of directors at Restoring Hope Ministries. Now, let me tell you, pulling up a chair to this table, it's not just about looking over some spreadsheets. It is a massive, profound commitment to stewardship. We're going to trace this path chronologically so you can see exactly what the orientation and the real expectations look like for a brand new board member. So let me ask you straight up, what does it actually mean to join a working board? A lot of us have this idea in our heads, right? You show up, maybe once a quarter, drink some mediocre coffee, nod along, rubber stamp a budget, and call it a day. Well, I'm here to tell you that at Restoring Hope Ministries, that couldn't be further from the truth. Their model is intensely active. It's a rigorous reality where members are rolling up their sleeves to actively protect the ministry's core mission. And to put that reality into perspective, just take a look at this number, 9. Okay, don't let the sticker shock get you, but 9 is the average number of hours per month expected from an RHM board member. I know, 9 hours a month, but that includes your prayer time, meeting prep, digging into documents, mentoring, committee work, and, of course, the actual board meetings. It's a very real investment of time and energy. Here's our syllabus for today's orientation. We're covering 1, the working board model, 2, core board responsibilities, 3, the first 30 days, 4, reaching day 90, and finally 5, long-term governance stewardship. Section 1, the working board model, moving from observer to active steward. So Restoring Hope Ministries is the parent organization here. They were founded back in November of 2021 to provide Christ-centered support. The whole goal is to offer spiritually serious care to individuals, families, churches, and leaders. Now, a model like this requires a board that actively guards that mission. They're not in there micromanaging the day-to-day operations, but they are dedicating serious time to make sure the ministry stays faithful and sustainable. But here's the catch. RHM is actually an umbrella for a dual mission. That dual mission includes RHSBC. That stands for the Restoring Hope School of Biblical Counseling, which is the educational arm. This means the board has to provide dual oversight. They aren't just governing a counseling center. They're simultaneously running a school. And that means overseeing student policies, making sure accreditation language is strictly accurate, and maintaining rock-solid boundaries for student practicums. Moving on to Section 2, Core Board Responsibilities, Fiduciary and Spiritual Governance. We know members are putting in those 9 hours a month and overseeing both a ministry and a school. But what are those hours actually doing? Understanding this balance is absolutely crucial. On the left, you see your standard legal corporate fiduciary duties. You've got the duty of care, which basically means showing up prepared, the duty of loyalty, putting the ministry above your personal interests, and the duty of obedience, keeping everything legally compliant. But look over on the right, spiritual stewardship. This is the profound theological weight of the role. At RHM, board members are serving as people who will ultimately answer to Christ for how they handled their authority, vulnerable people, money, and care. That is a massive responsibility to carry. To manage all that weight without completely burning out, the board operates on a quarterly governance rhythm. RHM intentionally avoids governing by urgency, putting out fires, Instead, they rely on this beautifully structured, predictable table. Quarter 1 is all about stewardship, renewing disclosures, and financial closeouts. Quarter 2 shifts gears into policy review and risk protection. Quarter 3 focuses on strategy and shaping next year's budget. And Quarter 4 wraps it up with approving that budget, finalizing committee assignments, and commissioning. It's just a brilliant way to stay on track. Section 3, the first 30 days, paperwork as protection. Let's shift our focus to the immediate start of a new member's journey. Here's the roadmap for that critical first month. By day 1, you're deep into reading the orientation handbook and bylaws. By day 15, you are formally signing your ethics agreements and the board covenant. And I actually love this last point. Notice you don't get your Microsoft 365 system access until day 30. That is entirely on purpose. Access to those internal drives is strictly role-based, and it's completely withheld until every single confidentiality and ethical agreement is firmly signed. No exceptions. Speaking of those agreements, this required 30-day list includes the board covenant, the conflict of interest policy, the ethics agreement, and a confidentiality acknowledgement. Now, as a new member, you might look at this stack and think, wow, this is just a bunch of corporate busy work, but it really isn't. This establishes a vital, non-negotiable ethical baseline before you ever cast a single vote or even glance at a financial report. Because, as this super powerful quote from their governance philosophy points out, the wrong board can expose vulnerable people, the right board strengthens prayerful discernment and public trust. That right there frames exactly why this paperwork matters so much. It acts as a literal shield. By signing that conflict of interest policy, you're ensuring funds aren't misused. By signing a confidentiality agreement, you're acting as the first line of defense to protect the deeply private pain of vulnerable clients and students. Section 4. Reaching Day 90. Strategic Integration. Once that foundation is locked in, the orientation shifts into strategic integration. This is where observation turns into active, hands-on participation. By that 90-day mark, 4 specific strategic actions have to be crossed off the list. First, you attend your first actual board meeting, coming prepared to observe and ask great questions. Second, you select a committee assignment. Third, you review the prior approved minutes and the latest financial summary to get totally up to speed. And fourth, you do a full debrief with your assigned board mentor to talk through any role confusion or policy gaps you might have noticed along the way. Let's zoom in on step 2 for a second, picking a committee. These are the working committees at RHM: Finance, Governance, Ethics and Risk, RHSBC Oversight, Church Partnership, and Operations. The critical thing here is that a new member has to align their specific professional background, whether that's law, accounting, clinical care, or pastoral ministry, with the practical, current needs of the organization. You don't just pick the committee that sounds the most fun, you pick the one where your expertise can actually close a gap for the ministry. Section 5. Long-term governance stewardship. Beyond the orientation. After that 90-day orientation is officially in the books, the training wheels come all the way off, and the real, enduring work of governance begins. A huge piece of that long-term puzzle involves risk management. The board has to constantly maintain strict scope clarity. What I mean is they have to understand the absolute difference between biblical counseling, which is scripture-grounded soul care, and clinical care, which involves licensed psychiatric or medical intervention. RHM makes it strictly clear that biblical counseling is not a substitute for emergency, medical, or psychiatric care. As a long-term board member, you have to fiercely protect those boundaries so the ministry never overpromises or steps outside its area of competence. As you wrap up your first full year, the board takes a step back to evaluate these specific markers. And what's really fascinating here is that they aren't just looking at your skills. They are evaluating your character over your charisma. Do you reveal faithfulness and humility? Do you show emotional maturity when conflict pops up? Are you supporting the leadership pathway by stepping up to mentor others? And on a very practical level, have you participated in at least one visible community event? Governance isn't just something that happens behind closed doors in a boardroom. It requires a real, visible presence in the community. Which brings us to this final provocative thought. If you are ever called to serve in a role quite like this one, are you ready to govern not by urgency but by mission? Joining a board like Restoring Hope Ministries is such an incredible honor, but as we've seen today through their meticulous 90-day onboarding and their deep ethical expectations, it requires a profound readiness to serve as a faithful, humble steward. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible framework today. Keep learning, keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.